So you're in a huge killing spree, and that Zarya just pretty much went down, like a sack of shit. And now you're relaxing. Your turret's right beside you, and now you want to act like a complete jackass. Mercy's right beside you, and everyone's going well until, hello. Poor Reaper. Just getting raped, just like that. Oh well. Let's review Torbjorn, shall we? So, this is Torbjorn, one of the shortest heroes in the game. I think he's the shortest hero in the game. And he's a defense hero with 200 health. He has a whole bunch of abilities and weapon ideas too. So let's talk about his main weapon, the Rivet Gun. The Rivet Gun is pretty impressive. It does 70 damage with no drop off. And it fires slow and it fires at a parabolic arc, which means you're going to have to lean at longer ranges. It fires at 0.6 rounds a second, which is pretty slow. And as you can see, it does a headshot. And it has about 18 rounds in total. Definitely useful when it comes to close ranges, or medium ranges at best. And most likely, like any other of the characters, or some of them, they have an ult fire. And the ult fire on this one, instead of a single shot, it fires a shotgun blast. The ult fire fires about 10 pellets per shot, and each pellet does about 6 to 15 damage depending on the range. It can cancel up from 7 to 20 meters, and it fires a little bit faster at 8 rounds a second, and it requires 3 rounds from the Rivet Gun in order to use it. And you can easily just dispense it, but you're going to have to easily reload more often than not. Very useful at close ranges, especially if your person is going to get a little bit closer than usual, especially with the tank heroes. So we're going to go over to abilities at 1. So what if your allies are in low health? Your first ability is called Armor Pack. Armor Pack pretty much does what it says. It deploys armor and gives them an extra 75 armor onto their health. But it does have a huge catch. You need about 50 scrap in order to deploy it. And it's very useful if your enemies, or your friends in this case, are in low health. And your ult ability, your passive ability, is called Scrap Collector. You collect 1 scrap over 0.5 seconds, or 15 scrap collected over fallen heroes. So if you have a whole bunch of heroes that are dead, you can simply just collect the scrap all over them. So we're going to cover his last weapon, and we're going to cover his last ability. And his ability pretty much makes him a nightmare. This one is called Build Turret, which he basically deploys a turret. And they all have a 40 meter range and an 8-second cooldown after being deployed. So level 1, it has 150 health, 2 rounds a second from each hit, and it does about 14 damage each. So it's pretty crappy at first, but what happens if you upgrade the thing? Well, after a miraculous 5 whacks with this without being damaged, it turns into level 2. In level 2, it pretty much doubles. You have 300 health on this turret and has 4 rounds a second of each hit. And just like the other one, it does 14 damage. So pretty useful, especially when it comes to open areas or if you're covering a payload. And his last weapon, Forge Hammer, is a melee weapon. It heals your turret 50 damage each, but it does about 55 damage on the enemy, much more than the usual melee. And it does about 1.25 swings a second. Lastly, his ultimate covers not only his turret, but on himself. And this one is called Molten Core. Molten Core increases your health by 300 armor, and gives you a double fire rate on both the Rivet Gun and its ult fire. The turret turns to level 3 and gives it 800 health. It also fires rockets and it increases its rounds per minute to 5 rounds a second. And it lasts all for a good old 12 seconds. Definitely useful if you're going to be going into overdrive and a whole bunch of enemies are coming your way onto an objective or just trying to destroy you and trying to head to the payload or an objective of yours. So, with all that being covered, let's see how we can play as Torbjorn. Unlike May, I think of Torbjorn as the absolute bastard that you don't want to screw with. In the earlier games, you would have about 6 Torbjorns and you would pretty much get wrecked. And that was pretty much a nightmare until they pretty much addressed the issue of putting one hero on each. But he's still a nightmare to deal with if it comes to the right gameplay or if it comes to the right person that used him, especially if he has a lot of experience. They must know the map really well in order to use him effectively. Deploy the turrets onto payloads to make him mobile, or even in defense deploy in key entry points or in secret points to surprise your enemy, like behind a passage or wall or something like that. Deploy armor packs near the end of your position or at the point of your position, and give them to the ones that need it the most, especially those that have low health. Stay with the turret and defend it at all times, and even repair it at all times, because without you, the turret would pretty much be destroyed in short order, especially if like Genji or Widowmaker shoot it down and you're just going to be a sad little dwarf. But unless you're in Molten Core mode, you can pretty much go on the offensive and take them down. So without further ado, let's show you some Torbjorn gameplay.
I know that.
Thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and be sure to look at my Facebook page down below. Until then, Galactic Storm saying, keep charging, bitches.